Ever wonder how much a single idea can really change the world? Not a war, not a new technology, just an idea? Well, today we're going to dig into a wild story about a little-known school for judges that did just that, quietly and profoundly, reshaping American justice for decades. So, let's start with the big question. How do judges really think? I mean, what's actually going on in their heads when they're making these huge decisions that affect all of us? It seems simple, but it's one of the biggest questions about our legal system. For a long time, there have been two main camps on this. First, you have the formalist view, the idea that judges are just neutral umpires calling balls and strikes, simply applying the law as it's written. Then you've got the attitudinal view, which says, come on, judges are basically politicians in robes, and their personal beliefs and party politics drive their decisions. But what if both of those views are missing a huge piece of the puzzle? Well, a really fascinating study dug up evidence of a third, massive influence, something that shows how just being exposed to a new set of ideas can completely change how judges rule, no matter what the law says or what party they belong to. And that brings us to a really pivotal moment, a time when a powerful new way of thinking started to creep into the American courtroom, almost unnoticed. Okay, so check out this timeline. It all starts in 1976 with something called the Maine Economics Institute for Federal Judges. By the 1980s, this thing was so popular, it was the hottest ticket in the judiciary, constantly overbooked. And look at that 1990 number. We'll get to that in a second, because it is staggering. So what was this thing? You can almost think of it as a secret school for judges, an exclusive intellectual boot camp for the most powerful legal minds in the country. To really get a sense of the scale here, just let this number sink in for a second. 40%. This wasn't some tiny fringe workshop. This was a massive operation. Yep, that's right. 40% of the entire federal judiciary had been through this one, all expenses paid, 2-week camp to learn about economics. We're talking a nice hotel, probably on a beach somewhere, to learn a whole new way of looking at the law. And before you think this was some kind of partisan echo chamber, check this out. That quote is from the liberal icon herself, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Judges from across the political spectrum won, and they were all blown away by how intense and rigorous it was. This wasn't about politics. It was about the power of an intellectual framework. So what in the world were they learning that was so persuasive? This is the story of how economics, the dismal science, made its way into the halls of justice. The judges were getting a crash course in a field called law and economics. It's an idea that came out of the University of Chicago, and the core of it is pretty simple. Analyze legal problems using economic tools. You start asking questions like, what are the costs and benefits here, and what's the most efficient outcome, instead of just, what does the law say? So here's a classic example. The idea of an efficient breach of contract. Now, normally, we think breaking a promise is just wrong. But this framework says, hey, what if breaking a contract and just paying the damages actually creates more economic value for everyone involved? Maybe that's not a moral failure, but an efficient outcome. See how that shifts you thinking? Or think about crime. Instead of focusing on punishment as justice or rehabilitation, deterrence theory treats it like a business decision. The goal of a prison sentence isn't just to punish. It's to make the potential costs of committing a crime so high that the expected benefits just aren't worth it for the criminal. It turns justice into a cost-benefit analysis. All right, so you've got hundreds of judges getting their minds blown by these powerful new ideas. But did it actually do anything? Did it change how they acted back on the bench? The researchers tracked these judges for years, and, oh yeah, the results are pretty jaw-dropping. The study boiled it down to 3 huge, clear changes in what these judges did after they attended the program. It literally changed the words they used, the way they ruled, and even the punishments they handed out. First, they started to talk the talk. Researchers scanned their written opinions, and yep, after the program, there was a huge, lasting spike in the use of economic language and reasoning. The ideas were literally seeping into the official language of American law. Second, their actual rulings changed, big time. This economic way of thinking often highlights the costs of government regulation, and the data is crystal clear. After attending, judges were way more likely to strike down regulations, especially those from agencies protecting labor rights and the environment. And we're not talking about a tiny blip. We're talking about a 16 percentage point jump in the probability of ruling against these agencies. In the world of judicial studies, that is an absolute earthquake, a massive shift. And third, and maybe most sobering, is what happened in criminal court. Remember that deterrence theory? The idea that you have to make the costs of crime outweigh the benefits? Well, this is where that classroom theory had real-world consequences. After taking this economics course, judges were more than 6 percentage points more likely to give a defendant a prison sentence. That economic framework seems to have pushed them toward a tougher, more punitive approach, all in the name of deterrence. So, when you pull it all together, this is so much more than a historical curiosity. It's a case study, really, in how powerful ideas can be, how they can fundamentally alter the institutions that run our lives. Just how persuasive was it? The study actually put a number on it, an 8% persuasion rate. Now, that might not sound huge, but to put it in perspective, look at the other numbers here. This 2-week seminar had a persuasive punch that was in the same league as the effect major media outlets like Fox News have on voting behavior. That's stunning. And you can see it plain as day in their rulings. In a huge environmental case, a judge who'd been to the program justified his decision to overrule the EPA by using the exact language he learned in class, talking about deterring the agency's spending discretion. The classroom lecture had become the law of the land. This whole story just leaves you with this one kind of chilling question. The Monero program proved that even the most educated, independent-minded people can be deeply influenced by a powerful new way of thinking. So it really makes you wonder, if a 2-week course could do all that, what other ideas being taught in what other hidden classrooms are quietly shaping our world right now?